Welcome back to our channel. I want to thank you for watching. If you are joining for the first time, I appreciate your time. In this episode, I want to look at the reason why the current United States of America's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has come out clear and said he would not be attending the G20 in South Africa. Like I said, geopolitics is a brutal game. An election has consequences. It is interesting. I find that laughable. Why? Because it's very easy to pick out fight with African nations, just like that. This is not coming out from the blue. South Africa is a very important and strategic country in the continent of Africa. South Africa is a member of BRICS nations and is a very important voice in the global south. And when South Africa speaks, the world listens. This is not coming out from anywhere. Marco Rubio came out and said, I'm not going to go to South Africa as a result of what's happening there. If you consider the accusation and a number of things being said, which to an extent were ill-advised by the US president accusing South Africa, talking about land expropriation issues, as we all seen in the media, the South African government haven't gone ahead taking those particular policies. So there is a lot of misinformation here and there is no clarity. But for a Secretary of State who should be working alongside a very important strategic partner in the continent of Africa and one of the major exporter and business partnership, South Africa is a very important country in the continent of Africa in terms of trade with the United States of America. These two countries do volumes and billions of US dollars each year. By singling South Africa again, talking about not attending the G20, this doesn't sit well. It goes beyond what we are seeing. But before we kick into looking at the reason why this is coming out now, not at the result of the current G20 Summit. It's been a lot of issues that have been brewing over the years, looking at going back to Biden administration and the current President Trump administration. But where do we start? Let's just go to the news channel called Wion. The journalists there put it in context to an extent, so to give us a picture to set the stage before we dive into some very important discussion.
The first important meeting of G20 foreign ministers will kick off in Johannesburg on February 20th. South African government says they are looking forward to host all member states, but this morning on a social media platform X, US Secretary of the State Marco Rubio wrote that he will not be attending the G20 Summit in Johannesburg, reiterating what President Trump has said, that South Africa is doing very bad things expropriating private property. In a statement, South Africa's Foreign Affairs Minister, Ronald Lamola, said he has noted the tweet and said there is no arbitrary disposition of land or private property in South Africa, and that South Africa's G20 presidency is not confined to just climate change, but also equitable treatment for nations of the global south, ensuring an equal global system for all. He said South Africa remains open to engage with the US. On Wednesday, presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya confirmed that conversation is already taking place at various levels between US and South Africa on issues relating to PEPFAR AIDS and also refuting some mischaracterization of South Africa and application of the country's laws. He even added that President Ramaphosa's intention is to welcome President Trump on a state visit ahead of G20, which will afford the two to engage on various issues. This is Calden Olmo from Johannesburg, South Africa for Wion World is One.
South Africa stood up strong to the United States of America's behavior in a number of areas, considering United States relationship, considering during the time of apartheid, the relationship has not stood well with regards to global partners. And more importantly, South Africa has taken the country of Israel to court, and a lot of lobbyists in the United States who to an extent do not agree with such move by the country of South Africa has caused chaos in regards to that particular strategic relationship. More importantly, South Africa was pushed during the Russian-Ukrainian war, which is still ongoing, to go away from the non-aligned stand. We saw the president of South Africa came out clear and said, we're not going to shift away from our non-aligned movement and we're going to stay strong. The United States under the former president Joe Biden pressured the country of South Africa over and over to take a different position. The issue about Simon Town, we saw what happened at the United Nations on how South Africa voted. It is interesting why the United States, the most powerful country in the world, is picking fight with one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful country, keeping Nigeria aside, in the continent of Africa. South Africa has stood up to the United States in several areas with regards to U.S. hegemonic issues in several areas across the globe. So it's important to know that geopolitics is a brutal game and election has consequences.
Earlier, President Trump asserted that South Africa was confiscating land, accusing Pretoria of treating certain classes of people very badly, quote unquote. Trump had also threatened to cut funding to the country.
Africa, terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa rejected Trump's assertions and said that he was ready to explain his government's land reform policy to his US counterpart. The act stipulates the government may, in certain circumstances, offer nil compensation for property that it decides to seize in the public interest. However, it does not allow for arbitrary seizures and states that attempts must be made to reach an agreement on compensation with the owner.
We all have seen Marco Rubio has come out clear and said United States of America's foreign policy will be based on the United States' own interests. I wonder how that's going to set up regarding this relationship. The former South Africa's foreign minister, Naledi Pandor, has always said it that South Africa will not and will never follow the United States' own direction on how the US perceive the world to operate. Make no mistake, actions like these with regards to the G20 only goes a long way to strengthen South Africa's position in the global south. And it goes a long way to look at countries like Egypt, Ethiopia, Algeria, all of these very strategic countries to keep moving closer to other geopolitical partners like Russia and China and some fringe powers across the European Union. It is important that Marco Rubio still have to understand the strategic value and importance of South Africa. Can Marco Rubio just come out clear and say, I'm not going to go to G20 that's taking place in Finland, or I'm not going to go to G20 taking place in India? This is unbelievable that he comes out clear and retweeted this particular issue, bringing it at the forefront. It is important that, like from what I see based on geopolitical engagement, South Africa is not waving. It's not moving any inch with regards to its position in hosting this summit. Geopolitics has some huge implications. It is interesting to know that the relationship between South Africa and the United States is in billions. South Africa's relationship with China and the country of Russia has alienated the United States in several ways. But more importantly, the former South African ambassador who accused the country of South Africa of actually sending arms to the country of Russia also acknowledged that South Africa has the right to choose its own partners and make decisions. So with the current accusation from the US President Donald Trump talking about South Africa's behavior and internal issues, it goes a long way to kind of link with the decision that Marco Rubio is talking about, that he's not going to go to the country of South Africa.
He would not be attending the Group of 20 talks, the G20 talks this month in South Africa. And Rubio said that he was skipping the event because of the host government, as it had an anti-American agenda targeting South Africa directly when saying this. Rubio's announcement comes 2 days after President Donald Trump lashed out at South Africa over the recent land reforms. In a post on social media, Marco Rubio said he would boycott the G20 talks of foreign ministers in Johannesburg on February 20th and 21st. Rubio wrote, South Africa is doing very bad things, expropriating private property. He also added that South Africa was using G20 to promote solidarity, equality and sustainability. In other words, DEI and climate change. DEI, or diversity, equity and inclusion, has been attacked relentlessly by the Trump administration.
A lot of other African countries are watching carefully. It is important for the United States of America to know that what's going on, the behavior, the condescending approach that we've seen in the past 24 to 48 months has shown that a lot of African nations, that the United States has its own perception in regards to global engagement, and African nations are observing this very closely. So the decision by Marco Rubio to come out clear and said, I'm not going to go to South Africa, it makes nothing. It's laughable in the continent of Africa, and African countries do understand that because it's not coming out from the blue. It goes back to a number of these issues that I've mentioned: the Russian-Ukrainian war, the pandemic engagement, and looking at other very important things at the United Nations, South Africa's position, taking Israel to the ICC, and South Africa's position in calling out the United States in a whole lot of very important strategic and global issues. This is not sitting well with regards to that relationship. Despite that, South Africa came under pressure that a number of United States of America lawmakers asked the United States to sanction South Africa. A letter was sent to former President Joe Biden asking him to sanction South Africa. I wonder how the United States of America senator perceive this particular relationship, as if South Africa is not relevant or it's not that important. It's a strategic partner for the United States of America. This part is always downplayed in the media. South Africa and the United States made billions of US dollars in terms of trade. Senators pushed the United States to get South Africa out of the African Growth and Opportunity Act. It is important to know that a number of countries in the continent of Africa have been pushed, and US has used this too. So Marco Rubio not going to South Africa, it moved no inch, no needle. It have no implication to an extent. Some experts think that's going to have an issue. Of course, if you don't have the US coming to the G20, that sends a signal. However, if this, as a result of not going to the particular summit, is based on such an accusation that's unfounded so far, then so be it. So like I said, the United States of America's foreign policy is going to be based on the US own interest. But I think that's where the clash is going to be moving forward in the next 4 years. It is important that the United States are recognizing that African countries have different choices. They have different geopolitical engagement. They have different partnership. As we all see France being kicked out in West Africa, the United States of America should understand that, especially the current administration, that a lot changed in the past 4 years under Joe Biden. The Sahelian countries are moved so fast. AGOA has no particular voice anymore the way it used to be. It's no longer a very strategic partner for its Western backers. So if you look at that particular relationship, it's going the lorry. So I think Marco Rubio still have to learn the ropes in a number of areas. He needs to understand the strategic importance of the continent of Africa. So by picking up or following his boss and just pushing South Africa that I'm not going to attend G20, I think other countries across the world, they are laughing at that particular decision. It is the worst strategic relationship that I've seen. For just tweeting out there that I'm not going to go to South Africa as a result of this, it sends no particular serious communication or partnership. This is a wake-up call for a number of African nations to note that the United States, to an extent, is not a very strategic partner. Keep the side of cutting aid to these countries in the continent of Africa. That's a whole different topic. The issue with South Africa and the United States of America is totally geopolitics, and is based on that the United States wants South Africa to be put in a small box and be ruled. But this particular perception has changed. That's the reason why South Africa is building a relationship with China and with Russia and some European countries. Now South Africa is a full-scale member and a big voice in the global south. So Marco Rubio's decision to not allow or not visit South Africa doesn't move any needle. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know in the comment section what you think with regards to such condescending communication from a very important strategic partner for the country of South Africa. And if South Africa should move ahead and engage other particular partners that will be visiting South Africa, like the South African's current foreign minister has said, that this particular meeting has nothing to do with the United States attending or their relevance. They are moving ahead to organize this to an extent. Like I said, geopolitics can impact the food on your table. So we better start paying attention on how there's a global shift at the moment. Like I said, election has consequences. I want to thank you for watching. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.